In this video on Google Sheets, I'm going to show you how to format rows and columns, including how to rearrange rows and columns, delete, insert, hide or unhide, resize, and adding more rows and columns throughout your sheet. Let's get started. First thing I want to do is kind of a trick, kind of a nice little way that you can select an entire column. Rather than trying to select all this data right here, there's a couple of easy ways to do that. Let's say I want to select all of column E. Now I could manually do this and drag it, but as you can see, when I have a lot of data, that's kind of a pain. Instead, there's a faster way. If I want to select the entire column, I just click on the letter. This way, I've selected the entire column here and I can do whatever I need to it. But there is also a little bit of a shortcut. If I select any cell within that column and I hold down the Control button and hit the Space button, what's going to happen is I'm actually going to select that entire column right here. Now, for the same idea, we can select an entire row. I could select an entire row like this, but of course that can be really annoying and painful. So instead, I could just click on the number right here. You'll notice that the columns are always letters and the rows are always a number. If I want to select row 12, I just click on the actual 12. Alternatively, I could select a cell, and instead of hitting Control and space, I could hit Shift and space. When I hit Shift and space, what I'm actually doing is selecting that entire row like that. If I select a cell and hit Control, Shift, Space, I select all these rows and all these columns, so I'm selecting all the data. Handy little trick for later. Well, let's go back to right here. Let's say I'm looking at this list of Star Wars Legos, and I want the minifigures column to be at the very end, because I consider that to be the least important. So I'm going to select the entire column here with the Control Space shortcut, and I'm going to put my hand over that letter at the top, and I'm going to drag it across and drop it right here. Now I can see this a little bit more because they're not being blocked by anything else, but I've rearranged that column exactly how I want. If I want, I could click it and drag it and move it as necessary. Here there's no letters that are overriding it. That's how I rearrange them. Same idea goes if I want to actually rearrange a row. Just click, hold over the number, wait till I have that little hand, and that allows me to move things around. Now, occasionally I might come across something that I don't actually want, like this row right here. Ooh, this one isn't really important. What I could do is I could just hit the backspace button, and that's going to delete all the entries. However, I now have this big space in the middle. Instead, what I want to do is I want to right click on that, and I want to click Delete Row. Now, it's going to not only delete that data, it's going to shift all of that data up and down. I can easily undo that. I could also do that exact same thing with this column here. Right click on the letter or the number, and delete column. Now it's removed all the data as well as shifting everything over so I don't have the space here that I didn't need. By the same token, I can insert something in between here. Now let's say I want to add a column in between pieces and minifigures. So I'm going to select this entire column here and I'm going to right click on it, and I have the option of inserting a column to the left of it or inserting a column to the right. I'm going to insert one to the left. So here I've created a new column and it shifted everything over. Alternatively, I could add a column to the right. Insert, one right. Now I have this new column here. Everything there has been shifted over. Same idea for the rows. I can select the row and I can choose to insert one above or insert one below. If you ever want to insert more than one, like let's say I want to insert 5 rows in between this, what I can do is I can select 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I want to insert 5 above. The number that you select is the number that you're going to insert. I haven't lost any data, but this is a faster way rather than trying to do it. Insert one above, insert one above, insert one above. By selecting and doing multiple ones, you can do that a little bit faster. So let's say I want to insert 3, insert 3 above. Now occasionally you don't want to lose the data, but you don't want to necessarily see it. Sometimes it's handy to have, but you don't want it in the way. In this case right here, I want to hide all of these different ones right here. So I could delete the data, I could clear the data, but an easier way without losing the data is to right click and click Hide Rows. Now I haven't lost that data, but you'll notice that the numbers jump. That's because the data is still there, it's just a little bit hidden. And I can unhide it by looking at these arrows right here. If I click on the arrow, bam, there's my data that I was hiding before. Same idea with columns. Let's say I don't really care about the year that it's released, but I don't want to get rid of it. I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to click Hide the Column. You can hide multiple ones as well. So now I'm just looking at this. And all of these things I'm undoing with the Control-Z shortcut. One other thing that's kind of handy is the ability to resize a column. Right now what we have is in this particular column here, sometimes the entry inside the cell is longer than we actually have. So what I could do up here is I could select my entire column and click Resize. Right now it's 100 pixels wide. I could change that to 150. And now you'll see that my column width is wider than any of the others. I could do this a little bit faster if I don't actually want to sit there and type in numbers. If I just do it like that, if I hold my cursor right in between, it allows me to click and drag. However, you occasionally might want to get to a thing where you want it to, not quite wide enough. I want it to be a little bit wider, a little bit wider. Oh, that was too wide, but not wide. The faster way to do this is you want to fit this to your data. So you right click on your column and you want to resize the column. In this case, I want to fit to data. When I do that, it's actually going to fit to the largest one here. So as I scroll down through here, this looks like it's the widest one here. There's going to be enough room for that and no more. But however, there's an even faster way. So let's go up to the very top, and I'm going to resize this back to where it was. Started out as 100. One faster way of doing this is I put my cursor between the two columns here and double click, and it's now resized that one. But of course, in a spreadsheet, you can usually do things a little bit faster to a lot more stuff. I'm going to highlight all of my different columns. I want every single one of them to fit their data. So if I have them all selected, I put my cursor between there, double click, bam. I've now resized everything. I've resized all of these columns. In this case right here, this one is a little bit of a problem. You can see it's a little bit wider than all the rest. In this case, I'm just going to delete this row. You don't necessarily need it. Let's try resizing. Bam, fits it. And you'll notice that it's actually fitting it to the top of the column here. You can see that my pieces one has significantly gotten smaller because it doesn't need to be that wide for all of that. One thing to be aware of, when you fit it to data, this isn't dynamic. This means that if you include something that's a little bit longer, it's not going to automatically resize your columns. You're going to have to do that manually. Let's say we go down here to this one. I'm now wider than the column. Even though it was fitting to data, it isn't dynamic. It didn't change with it. If I want to make this wider, I have to do it again. There we go. Now it's the size that I actually need. Now, in our actual format for Google Sheets, we have the numbers vertically in the rows, and we have the letters horizontally across the columns. If I go all the way to the bottom here, this one I've ended at 280 rows. If I want to add more rows, here's how I do it. At the bottom it says add 1,000 more rows to the bottom. That seems a little excessive, but nicely you can change that. Maybe I just want 10 more rows. Add, bam, now I've added those. Conversely, my columns is limited to 26, the first 26 letters of the alphabet. That doesn't mean that it's stuck. This is just what the default is. I can go on to the next one. If I'm going to go to the next to the right, if I insert one to the right, you'll notice that the rows now become AA and AB. It's just going to continue on the alphabet with 2 letters now as opposed to 1, but the same rules will actually still apply. Now I've added 2 extra rows. If I wanted, I could add and insert 6 to the left of that. I've now added a few more. One thing to consider, it's way, way, way easier to scroll down through a spreadsheet than it is to scroll sideways. If your data is wider than it is longer, there's a really interesting little function called transpose that's definitely worth looking into. If your data is too wide and you want it to be tall, transpose is going to flip your rows and your columns. Handy and worth looking into if your data is becoming unmanageably wide when it could be taller.